Something magical happens when you sit down behind a microphone, and it might not be what you think. That's what we're going to talk about today. So, welcome to the Daily Voiceover Huddle. My name is Mike Hathcote. I'm a full-time voice actor and voiceover coach. I just read a book called The Voiceover Blueprint. You can get the digital copy and the audiobook and 4 free gifts with the link down below for less than $10. Don't forget to chime in on the chat. We're going to do some shout outs here just in a few minutes. And also like and subscribe and hit the notification bell and share and give it a back rub and all the other stuff you got to do to these videos. We'd appreciate it. And lastly, the Vegas event. Seats are selling quick. So we've got about 50 seats. Well, not about, we have exactly 50 seats for the event because that's how big the space is. And those are going quick. So if you want to attend our Vegas event, our live in-person Vegas event for beginners, check that link out in the chat below or in the description below. All right. Now let's get into what we're talking about today, and that is the magical thing that happens when you step behind a microphone. And what that thing is you go into performance mode, or at least most people's brains, that's where they go. They go into performance mode. And performance mode is the enemy. We don't want performance mode. We want natural. But there's something in our brains that switches when we sit down behind a microphone that changes the way we deliver our lines. And it's the sense that we have to be perfect when we sit down behind a microphone. And once again, perfection is the enemy, especially when you're trying to get a natural conversational read, which is king right now. Most people, in the directions that you get in auditions and in jobs, they want something authentic and natural and conversational. But performance mode is the opposite of that, where you have to be perfect. And that is not what we want. So I had to unlearn a lot of that kind of thing because I came from radio. And those of you who've maybe spent some time in radio know that, especially back in the 90s when I started, you had to have kind of a slick, polished, professional announcer-y sound, you know? And that is definitely not the case these days. You need to relax. You need to slow down. And in fact, when I first started doing VO full time, I literally had a sign that said slow down above my computer screens to remind me to just slow down a little bit, take it easy, breathe, relax. And that is what a lot of people run into. When I coach people on performance, they are just blazing through the script and slow down. And that's your adrenaline. And that's natural. Your adrenaline is going to pump, especially if you've got someone sitting there listening to you read. That compounds the adrenaline. You get nervous. And it's natural. It happens to everyone. But the idea is to, once again, slow down. I know it's easier said than done, but slow down a little bit, breathe, relax, take your time. And I promise the more you do it, the easier it gets. So practice makes perfect. The more time you spend behind the mic, the more natural you're going to come across. Eventually, you won't even realize the mic is there. It'll just, fade into the background and you can focus on what you're trying to deliver. But I guess the last thing is don't go it alone. Get coaching, get training, because what could happen, and this is something I've seen, is you will ingrain bad habits. If you're just out there on an island trying to do this yourself and you're reading what you think sounds good, you could be ingraining really bad habits that are going to be even that much harder to break out of when you actually do start coaching or do start, trying to put a demo together or whatever. It's going to be that much harder for you to give a good read because you've been doing it on your own so long that those habits are just, really ingrained. So Don't go it alone. Try to relax, get some good feedback. And then once you get the good feedback, that's when you want to rinse and repeat and exercise those good habits for giving a good conversational read. So don't believe your brain when you sit down behind the magic microphone because your brain lies to you a lot of times. Okay. All right. Let's see what's happening in the chat. There's Wayne, first in from Port Orchard, Washington. Ding, ding, ding. And there's Sean from Longview. And good morning, Dennis in Pasadena. Jason says, oh my gosh, Mike, Magic Mike, tell me about the Magic Mike from Kearney, Nebraska. And there's David from Hamilton, Ontario, and Dennis from Illinois. There's Ron from Grand Haven, Michigan, and Kirk from Greenville, South Carolina. Andrew from Latvia, good morning to you. And there's Nancy from Yankton, South Dakota. There's Becky from Albion, Michigan. Hello to you, Troy. Good morning, wherever you are. And there's Charlie from Sparta, Wisconsin. Brett says, top of the morning to you. And there's Brian from, well, doesn't say where, but good morning, Brian. And Tracy from Rochester, Minnesota. Just be yourself, rough around the edges. That's right. That's right. Warts and all. That's usually what they want when they want a conversational, authentic read. Do not try to be perfect. Now, I will say this. If you're doing something that's not supposed to be conversational, say you're doing a medical read or something that is a little more, straight down the middle and serious, I don't wanna say try to be perfect, but you're gonna be a little bit more, you're gonna pay a little bit more attention to detail there. Um, I'd still say not perfect, but just, you're gonna pay a little bit more attention to making sure that you've gotten the right tone that they're looking for. But any other time when you're trying to be natural and conversational, just be yourself. That means, how you talk to someone in a normal conversation. Do you scrutinize every word that you're saying when you just talk to your friends? No, you just let it flow. And that's what that's about. Troy says, I've just told someone this exact thing about natural voice. Yep. Edward says, howdy. Howdy, all from Jacksonville, Florida. And there's Tim from Altoona. Good morning to you. There's Jim. Good morning from Memphis. Mohammed says, hope your day is going great. I'm doing English VOs, but being from Bosnia, my accent still slips sometimes. Do you recommend any advice on how I could fix it or some linguist? Yes. Well, you can always hire a linguist or a dialect coach. You can always do that to try to lose that accent. Um, there are plenty of YouTube videos on how to drop accents, how to actually change your accent to a specific, location. But yes, practice makes perfect on that. Um, I actually had to do that myself, being from Tennessee. I had to drop that Southern accent that I used to have, which was pretty pronounced. And so I did meet with a dialect coach several times, and she was able to, shake that out of me a little bit. And then plus living there or not living there anymore helps because you're not submerged in there. But yeah, just find a dialect coach that specializes in American accents or whatever accent you're trying to, replicate. It can be done though. There's John. Good morning from Denver. Jim says, I use the feedback channel in Discord to get comments on my editions. There you go. That's a good idea. Just make sure that you're getting the feedback from people who are qualified to give the feedback. Dave says, love that slow down, putting that sign in my studio. Yep. Greetings from the heartland of Iowa. Yep. It was up there for years. It was right above the monitor, just a constant reminder to just take it easy and slow down. And after a while, you will. You will. Madge Pro Studio says, starting in the early 80s, then restarting in 2017 was a shock in performance. Took a bit to understand, and then more to break the habit. I was told it's part of the fight or flight reaction. Yeah, that makes sense, actually. I've never heard that, but that does ring a bell. So that's a good point. And it is hard, especially when you're used to, being perfect and being announcery on the radio. You have to kind of shake that off, and it takes a while. Happy and joyful from sunny Florida. Alex says, thanks, Mike. MIC. Get it? Mike? Mike on the mic. Jim says, do you favor shotgun mics over condenser? I don't favor it. I just like it. I've got a condenser microphone too. I've got a TLM 103 that is sitting in a box over there, but I've used this one almost, well, let's see. Yeah, pretty much exclusively for the last 4 years probably. Um, I find that condenser microphones are a little more forgiving for imperfect spaces. Not that mine's imperfect. I mean, I can record with my door open. I don't even pull this door shut most of the time when I'm recording because this is such a good microphone. Um, but 6 one, half a dozen the other. It really kind of depends on what your setup is and what you like. There's Brian from Vegas. My apologies. Hey, Brian, if you're in Vegas, check out the link below. We're coming to Vegas at the end of this month. We're going to do a live in-person event. I'd love to see you there. Tim says 40 years in radio, tough habit to break. Amen, brother. I feel your pain. I wasn't in there. I wasn't in radio for 40 years, but yeah, I can imagine being in there for 40 years trying to break that habit. That's hard. Gregory says, Gregory from far north Dallas. I had to let go of judging others in this industry by 80s and 90s radio standards. It ain't like that no mo. You are correct. Every now and then, and I mean very seldom, but it does happen, someone will ask for that typical announcer sound. And boy, that's when I see one like that, I'm like, I'm on it because I can go right back into that if I need to, you know. Um, it's pretty easy to tap back into that when you have to. Jim says, I like my Southern accent. I identify my samples in ACX as being American Southern. Yeah, you can totally do that. A good buddy of mine, Troy Holden, markets himself as the blue collar voiceover. And, so he gets work regularly. I mean, he's a big deal. And so he was one of my very first, or well, not very first. He was one of my earliest uh students when I was started doing coaching. And he does really well by just marketing himself into that niche, that Southern accent niche. He doesn't try to be someone else. And that's great for him. It works. So you do you, boo boo. You do you. There's DeCarlos, also from Vegas. Hope to see you at the end of the month, too. Carlos is in the Blueprint. All Blueprint members get to go for free. So that's kind of cool. There's Terry from Falston, Maryland. Wayne said, people asked me for years if I was working in the media. I was never in radio or TV. It's just my voice, and has had to help me break it. This is tough. Yep, it is. Even if you weren't even in radio, just if your voice just has a certain kind of a tenor to it or whatever, that can also be mistaken as radio voice, because for years and years, radios radio stations recruited people who had that sort of sound to their voice, and everyone just got used to hearing that on all the different stations, and that just kind of became a thing. But nowadays, if you listen to the radio, sure, you're gonna get some people who sound that way, but you're also gonna get some people who just sound like real people, and that's what people resonate with. Meaning listeners, when they hear someone who sounds just like them, those are the people who resonate with the listener, are the people who just sound like people, and that's what's really popular right now. Jim says the deep resonance actually extends the range of an AM signal. Interesting. Did not know that. Alan says, hey, from PA, got a shotgun mic arriving today. Budget only allows for a $100 used AT87 or 875R, supposedly familiar to the 416 sound, though. Looking forward to trying it in my blanket booth. Great. You'll find, Alan, that it will be more forgiving, especially if you have, a booth, a blanket booth and that kind of thing where it's not fully sound. Well, no room is soundproof, but it doesn't have walls like this, that can keep the sound out. Because there are two things you need to worry about with your booth: deadening the sound inside the booth and keeping outside sound out. And so, as I said a minute ago, I'm lucky enough that I can usually record with this door open and it not be an issue. If there's stuff happening in the house, then of course I'll pull the door shut. I'll shut the office door and this door, and that usually takes care of it. But yeah, hopefully that will help you out. All right. I'm not sure, Brian, what you're referring to here. No Tears by Dr. Kenneth Nolan Daniels. I'm not sure what that book refers to or whatever. So if you could maybe be a little bit more specific there, I'd appreciate it. Okay, and once again on the Vegas event, it is for beginners. So, if you've been in this game for a while, you will probably not really learn anything new. It's really for people who are either, you know, interested in VO and haven't even started, or people who've maybe just started and are trying to navigate the craziness that is this industry and trying to figure out, how to get through it and do their best. So we cover everything from, well, it's an all-day event, so it's everything. I mean, everything from performance to technology to just all kinds of stuff. So, agents and where to get the work and equipment and all that stuff. So it should be a great event. Wayne says, well, that is interesting. AM is all I grew up with. Casey Kasem in the top 40, right? Yep. Now on with the countdown. Jim says, what filters do you use in editing? I don't use any filters in editing. You shouldn't have to. Less is more when it comes to editing. You shouldn't have to throw on a bunch of effects and a bunch of this and that and then the other thing to actually get a good sounding read. So the only thing that I apply to my edit is a little bit of EQ, the tiniest bit of compression. I mean, just the tiniest little bit, just to smooth out the edges. And then just things like, declicker and de-esser and that kind of thing. But as far as like filters, I don't use any. You can always tell when someone has layered their recording with all kinds of effects, and it's usually not good. So less is more. That's why a good audio engineer to dial in your sound is so important, because they will get the best out of what you deliver by giving you the right effects. I definitely don't. I do have a declick, no plosive blockers, and yes, few as possible. Less is more. All right, guys. I think I'm gonna bounce. I got to get back into e-learning land here in just a second, and once again, working on yet another video demo for a client. So, got a lot to do today, and today is my wife's 50th birthday. So we're having a little get together this evening with family. So looking forward to that. Anyway, I'll be back here tomorrow, and we'll talk about something else in voiceover. So hope to see you there. And until then, break a lip. See you later.